Hello, everyone. This is a Low Battery Smoke Detector Panel. This is Charlie Mann and Brody Lynch, who's currently homeless for the day. He got kicked out of his house for being anti-Semitic. Uh, I'm just kidding. Anyways, our first topic is Syria. We got Al-Shara Julani, or Muhammad. I don't. This guy's like three different names. I don't even care to say. Fuck, Giuliani. That's what we'll call him. Giuliani made a speech at the UN. First speech in 60 years from a Syrian president since al-Attasi in the 60s. That was when he was serving under Salah Jadid, which was the Marxist Ba'ath. Do you know how to the Ba'athist?
Ba- Bath? I always just went with Bath.
Yeah, there are a
You
couple different
pronounce
ways to pronounce it, but so the Ba'ath Party in Syria um came to power when they overthrew the Syrian Revolution, which was kind of like it was called a civilian government, but it was actually more of an authoritarian rule that had which was marked in economic instability. And it was kind of a disaster since they parted from the Egyptian ruling in the 40s and 50s. They were overthrown by the Ba'ath Party, Salah Jadid, and al-Attasi, who gave a speech in the UN. That was the last time. And they were opposed by the opposition, which was also a Ba'ath party, but it was the right-wing Ba'aths instead of the Marxist left-wing Ba'aths. This was Hafiz al-Assad, which was the father of Bashar al-Assad. Um, Basically, this whole divide started, well, it started before this, but the divide was mainly, um, because of their differences, their significant differences in how to counter losing the Golan Heights, right? Which happened in the
mm,
6 Day War. Basically, now, Hafiz al-Assad was no supporter of Israel by any stretch of the imagination. However, he did not want Syria being a part of what would later become the Yom Kippur War of 73. Because al-Assad's view, and I would actually agree with him on this, it's easy to say in hindsight, of course, but I get where he's coming from, because he thought that, like, listen, we already lost the Golan Heights. Why are we going to fight a war for Jordan and Egypt, right?
mm.
And Jadid was saying, no, we need to help them defeat Israel, and he was saying that's not going to happen. We don't want to lose even more territory. And basically, Jadid, who was in power, not Assad at the time. This was in 1970, and Jadid sent troops in Jordan to help the PLO, and al-Assad actually used his power to um kind of ruin that whole operation, sabotage the operation.
Mm.
And then they ended up withdrawing, and that created um a militant kind of a mini civil war, which al-Assad won. I believe he had more power, like more money, which probably helped. Um, yeah, and that's when the Assads came to power. And then obviously what ended up happening many decades later is the Syrian civil war. Um, and we all know who's behind that. The US, Turkey, and of course Israel. Um, Brody, do you remember the Obama Fast and Furious scandal?
Uh, Briefly,
Or
briefly.
actually, you know what? I don't know if the Fast and Furious scandal was when they found out our weapons went to the Sinaloa cartel or Al Qaeda, because there are two separate ones under Obama. One of them's the Fast and Furious scandal, but anyways, the Sinaloa one, that's for another day. But this one's much worse actually. So basically, Obama was aiding the Syrian rebels, right, by sending them a lot of tanks, weapons, and they found out through an investigation, and this is legitimate. They found not a conspiracy theory. They found out that it quote unquote accidentally fell into the hands of Al Qaeda and ISIS, right? Accidentally. Like I don't know how a tank, like how does dozens of tanks fall into the hands? Oh yeah, a fucking giant tank just fell into their hands. If it's like an AirPod case, that can fall into someone else's hands, right? A
Right.
phone maybe, a pencil, right? These are things that fall into people's hands, not a fucking tank.
10-tongue monster.
Oh yeah. I dropped it on the side of the road and someone picked it up.
You know what's interesting is because the sort of, what is it, bath or bats or
Bath.
whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think that that was sort of an organic movement, or do you think that that was started by outside influence?
No, I think it
Because
was
that,
organic.
well, because that movement also happened in Iraq.
Hmm.
Uh, so do you think that there was some sort of foreign, um, some it was like created by a foreign interest, or it was a complete organic, natural, sort of uh, true Arab movement?
Well, they definitely had support from other Arab nations, but no, that was an organic movement. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. It was a lot different than Iraq's Ba'ath Party, especially the Marxist Ba'aths in Syria. I can't. Yeah, when people think Ba'ath movement, they do not think Marxism. They think right wing. But there was a Marxist Ba'ath movement in Syria, and it didn't last too long because Assad, who had more money, more influence, overthrew them. Um, the thing with Assad is, so I've talked to people in other countries. Like a lot, obviously, I mean, I've never met a Libyan that doesn't support Gaddafi. Iraqis, most of them support Saddam. In Syria, Assad's not as popular.
Mhm.
Um, but I do think one of the main reasons is it's like an emotional connection, right? Because most of the people in Syria that especially like the younger ones, since they were like 6 years old to 18, 20 years old, all they know is war, right? Destruction. And the best news that they'll ever receive in their life, hopefully there's nothing worse. The best news they've ever received is Assad is defeated. Because even if they do support Assad, I mean, they kind of knew that that was a losing battle, and Assad being defeated means no more war, and that is honestly good, right? Like for them and just in general, that's better than the Civil War. It obviously it's nowhere near as good as pre 2011 Syria, but it's better than a civil war that destroyed most of the country and killed over 1 million people.
The thing with Syria and Assad's sort of ousting is, the thing that was strange to me is, because you have Arab Spring in 2011, and like dominoes, the entire Middle East
Yes,
fell. But
it started
Assad
before
had,
Assad.
right,
Yeah,
but Assad, like, you had Egypt and Libya, and everything just sort of collapsed. But Assad had remained, I thought, pretty resilient for like nearly over a decade. And so I really thought that, just sort of looking at it, I was like, wow, like they're pretty resilient. ISIS had sort of been kind of like, some people said they were defeated, but they were definitely like numbed out. Like they sort of lost influence compared to when they had sort of major land, like in 2015. And then it just seemed out of the blue, like
right.
within a
Yeah.
week. It's like, that's the thing that really got me tripped up. It's like, okay, we have all of these nations involved in this major war in Syria, and Assad is resilient for over 10 years. And then you have this really small group within a week take him out. And there
Are
was
you
like
referring?
no,
You're referring to the Hayat Tel I don't know, HCS, right?
right.
They were already heavily
Yeah,
defeated before then, but yes, it was like a couple weeks. Yeah,
but it seemed like there was sort of no fight. Like they just sort of, at
right.
least that's the way media
That should
portrayed
be a
it. It's like,
Lockheed. That should be a Lockheed Martin ad.
yeah,
We
it's like,
we defeated Assad. I mean, HTS defeated Assad. But no, dude,
yeah,
like, but isn't it weird how ISIS just disappeared from the media, right? Out of nowhere,
mhm,
right? Like it's some with some things you kind of just have to like use common sense, reading between the lines, and use pattern recognition. Would it make sense that a militant group that powerful with that much capability just disappears? That doesn't happen.
yeah,
It just doesn't. Right? They were
mhm,
clearly spread out, and what we know is that they had connections. Was it? Yeah, it was Al Nusra. They had direct connections to Al Nusra. Al Nusra started their branch off HTS. I feel like the branch offs are kind of bullshit, if you ask me. I think that they just kind of wanted to disengage from the label of Al Qaeda, right? If you hear Giuliani's speech, or I don't know if this is a speech or an interview, but he was talking about how he disengaged from, and he used the term that part of my life, right? He kind of makes it seem like he's a former drug addict or like someone in an AA meeting.
right,
Oh yeah, that part of my life is over. I've recovered. It's like you're not a former drug addict, dude. You're a fucking former Al Qaeda member. Like
yeah.
what the fuck? What are we doing here? Like it's
And you have
like
to ask the question, like, how much has changed? Like, oh, because some people, it's like, oh, I'm born again or whatever, but it's like you're literally in Al Qaeda. Like, are you really a new person, or you know what I mean? Like, do you still harbor those sort of prior? Like, do you still have that sentiment? Are you still, what really has changed?
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, what changed is he got a suit and a tie, and his beard is shorter.
Exactly. He's
Um,
pro Western. He's got this sort of Western aesthetic, and so he's one of us
my
now.
opinion, it's my opinion that makes him look even more like a terrorist.
Yeah.
But yeah, we find out Al Nusra has direct connections to ISIS. Al Nusra, founded by Al Qaeda, started the HTS. So, I mean, people can say all they want about this and that, but I mean, it's annoying when people like kind of group all these Islamist groups into one category, and it's not because it's I mean, it is racist. Well, it's ignorant. But it's almost like I find it really just stupid because
And late.
for it is lazy, absolutely. It's just dumb because you look at a country like Azerbaijan, right, which is full of Muslims. They're Israel's biggest ally they're not in the Middle East, but in that region, they're Israel's biggest ally, probably outside of the United States. And if you want to talk about civilian populations, they're absolutely Israel's biggest ally. Um,
Hmm.
and probably the only country that over 60% of the population supports Israel, if I'm being like in the whole world. And they're
Hmm.
full of Muslims, right? Because Israel helps with their ethnic cleansing of Armenia, which will probably continue in under a year, guaranteed. Um,
Hmm.
and Azerbaijan is huge enemies of Iran. You look at Hezbollah. Hezbollah and Al Qaeda fucking hate each other. They're on opposite sides of the civil war in Syria. They would like nothing more than wipe the other off the map.
Or you had ISIS K, well, you know, ISIC, I guess, Islamic State in this sort of Khorasan, I think it's called. They were fighting the Taliban. So it's like you have
Yeah, and it's
uh,
weird because the Taliban were founded by Al Qaeda as well, but they have actually disengaged from Al Qaeda more than the others, right? Because you look at the Taliban, they don't really have that much to do with Al Qaeda anymore. People remember that the Taliban were the ones um, sheltering Osama bin Laden. But the Taliban, I mean, they're separate from Al Qaeda now in many ways, right? But Al Nusra, absolutely. I mean, Al Nusra really doesn't have a whole lot to do with anything outside of just Al Qaeda changing their name to start two more proxies.
Right.
And then ISIS, and I mean, ISIS supposedly fought, or they did fight, Al Qaeda funded groups for a little bit. I mean, not really, but if we're being honest, ISIS and Al Qaeda kind of just have the same enemies. HTS and ISIS absolutely have the same enemies. The Taliban has left that region alone I mean, I don't know if they ever were involved in that. I mean, the Taliban, outside of taking over, oh no, sorry, that was Al-Qaeda, that was the Mujahideen that took over the Soviets in Afghanistan, and then they founded the Taliban in that region, and then moved to Syria. So the Taliban kind of is separate now from Al-Qaeda. You can make that argument. You can't make that argument with the HTS. But yeah, so he is shaking hands with Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio is,
Yeah.
I mean, he's crazy. He's crazy. I used to like him many years ago. That was, yeah, no, I definitely don't like him anymore. He might be my least favorite politician in the White House outside of Randy Fine, I would say.
Dang.
But
It's like the thing with sort of like geopolitics and foreign policy is like you don't you don't have enemies, you have competitors. You know, there are no real enemies. Everyone's just a competitor, and whatever suits your interests at the moment, then you'll shake hands, you'll put the past aside, and you'll work together. And then if you see, you know, if they become a competitor or if you see a better opportunity with someone else, then you ditch them. It's the same thing, I think, that happened in Iraq. CIA helped install Saddam Hussein, supported
they didn't
him in the Iran
necessarily
War.
they didn't necessarily help install him, but they supported, or maybe I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, they didn't help install him, but they helped him invade the southern Gulf of Iran. Because you know what, and they wouldn't have done that unless Iran overthrew their installed dictator, right? There's nothing the CIA hates more than when their installed dictators get overthrown.
Right.
There's nothing they hate more. Um,
But it's so crazy how he was at the very least an ally, because we had supported Iraq in the
he was.
Iran-Iraq war, and then all of a sudden he became this sort of the world's evil man, you know, evilest man or
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah. How dare he
Because
use the chemical weapons that Ronald Reagan gave him and kind of forced his hand into using, right? It's kind of weird. I know the media talk. I mean, Reagan, and again, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is literally public information. Um, our country under Reagan gave him those chemical weapons that he used against the Kurd revolution, who, by the way, were not a friendly group of people, the Kurds in Iraq. Now, I'm not going to get into that whole little, like, defending Saddam Hussein over everything he did argument, but the Kurds were not a friendly group of people. But the U.S. did give him those weapons. And yeah, what, 40? No, I'm not talking about 40. 20 years later, we say, oh, he has chemicals of mass destruction, which he actually gave them up, and we found absolutely zero evidence that he still had any weapons of mass destruction. And Trump, this is one of the reasons Trump got popular in the Republican race. Remember his interview with, I don't know who it was with, but he was talking about Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein, and he goes, yeah, Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein weren't great, but we made a mistake getting in there. We made a mistake. There were no weapons of mass destruction. Libya's worse without Gaddafi, and Iraq was worse without Saddam. And then you remember what the woman said? She goes, oh, what about Assad? And he goes, No, we still need to take out Assad. Do you see the irony in that, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Right? Oh, he can't say that we shouldn't take out Assad because then in, years later when he actually does it, he'll look like a fucking hypocrite. Right? So
yeah, yeah.
he has to still oppose Assad, right? And no one saw the irony with that, and probably still don't see the irony with that. I didn't see the irony with that. I mean, at the time I was fucking 12 years old, but I mean, yeah, that should kind of highlight really the whole agenda and how much of a liar not just Trump but really everyone in the White House is, right? Oh, I still have to talk about Assad being bad. Maybe in 10 years we can include Assad in that conversation of maybe we shouldn't have taken him over, and then the next person that we need to take over we can say no, he's bad. Assad, Gaddafi, and Saddam weren't that bad, but this next guy is really bad. And then, maybe it's Maduro, and then later on you say, oh yeah, Maduro we shouldn't have done. But then you get the point I'm trying to make. I mean, it's incredibly stupid. I mean, we didn't even just use ISIS as an excuse in Syria. We used it as an excuse in Somalia, right? Somalia had ISIL troops. And I mean, we've been bombing the shit out of Somalia for so many years. Um, I mean, Trump bombed the shit out of them in 2019 alone. And I mean, and they gave him a Nobel Peace Prize. His No New Wars was already bullshit because people are acting like he didn't have any wars in his first term. Somalia doesn't count? How does Somalia not count as a war? I mean, how many missiles did we send over that country? And people say Trump didn't have any wars. He literally had a war in Somalia in his first term, and no one talks about it. It's ridiculous. Alon Omar's family worked for Syed Barre, which was a United States funded dictator in Somalia, who's now been deceased. Like,
Wow.
we've been involved, and Somalia is a dump. It's a dump. You want to talk about shithole countries, Donald Trump? The countries that the United States has been a part of are shithole countries. So, yeah,
Uh,
no one talks about Trump being involved in Somalia, and that's been a thing for 40
Are
years.
ya ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
I can't hear you.
Aye, aye, Captain!
Oh!
Here's our article from the Glorious Times of Israel. Syrian leader Shara meets World Jewish Congress head, discusses talks with Israel. So, Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara meets with New York as World Jewish Congress president and businessman Ronald Lauder. Now, I don't know anything about this guy, but he's Jewish. Meeting is reported by the official Syrian news agency, which says the two discuss negotiations between Israel and Syria. Wow, interesting. The two countries have been in talks over a security agreement, though Shara has said in a full peace deal normalization along with the lines of the Abraham Accords is not currently on the table. Interesting. So, who knows if that's actually true? The CIA has probably taught him how to lie already, right? I can't translate that. Mediator. So this guy, the same guy, Lauder, was decades ago was reported to have served as a mediator between Israel and Syria. Wow, shuttling messages between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and then Syrian President Hafez al-Assad. Interesting.
and this guy, the Syrian president now, he was in Al Qaeda. Was he ever in ISIS?
Probably, but I mean, they hit their faces. ISIS hit their faces for a reason.
But they, what was it like? They've never attacked Israel or something like that. There's that meme that's like,
Oh, well, yeah, that's true. They never attacked Israel. They're in Somalia. They I mean, more than that. I just can't. More than
do
those
you
two countries.
think that this Syrian president is not just some soldier that moved through the ranks, that maybe he was installed by someone?
Yeah, I think that the CIA arresting him, that is a little convenient. I mean, again, this is just a theory here. but I think there's a chance that that may have been like a secret meeting, and they thought that maybe because of today's technology, if anyone ever found out about that meeting, how bad it would look. So arresting him doesn't really look as bad. But again, that's just I don't know, maybe that's bullshit. I don't know, but it just sounds really convenient.
There's so many different ways. That's why it's so strange. I mean, it's strange in of itself. I think we were talking about this earlier, how this guy who, was a part of Al Qaeda was on, one of the world's most, had a bounty on his head, and now he's
Hmm.
in New York City of all places. You
Yeah,
know,
that too. And that could have been legitimate, you know. Maybe they legitimately did want about it. That could have definitely been used as a tactic to stir him into, supporting different policies, countries, right? Maybe, I mean,
Mhm.
I'm sure he had a lot of influence and power, and maybe he didn't want to do something or didn't agree to something, and then the U.S. said, "All right, we'll put a bounty, and then let's see how you act." Now he's
Yeah,
an
that's
ally.
that's
He chose life over
yeah.
death. He chose corruption over death. So, I mean, honestly, in that position, maybe, I mean, if you're in that position, what are you supposed to do? I mean, that's kind of like that's an offer you can't refuse. Do
But
this
it's
or we'll.
interesting.
Mm,
It's interesting too because I'm not I'm not too familiar with his movement per se, but from my understanding about Al Qaeda in general, is they sort of want to set up a theocracy, right? Like they sort of have an objective to set up a sort of like kind of like the Taliban, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I, I'm kind of retarded. What's a theocracy?
It's a state that sort of is run by it's a state that moves in the interest of a religion specifically. So you have clergy is like
On
clergy or
paper, I
like
would agree.
so like
Yeah,
the church becomes the head of state. So the contemporary example would be like Vatican City, or sort of Iran. Iran is the classic example
yeah.
because the church in Iran, the uh, Shia, the entire government is run by clergy. Like the supreme leader, so the head of state is not just a political figure; he's a religious figure as well.
I would agree somewhat, I think, on paper now, but also here's the thing. Bashar Assad was far from perfect. I think his father was a lot better. Um, I think that they used the upset Muslim population in Syria kind of as a like a tactic, like a weapon. And that's
Mhm.
why it kind of seemed like this sort of Islamist revolution when it kind of really wasn't behind the scenes, right? Same with the Taliban. I mean, the Taliban literally overthrew the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, right? So I don't
Right.
think that really has to do anything with religion, right? If you're overthrowing the Islamic Revolution.
But so the way I'm going with this is if Al Qaeda, so for example, like the Taliban, um, they've implemented pretty like Sharia law, and they've they've put the Quran, basically their interpretation, into practice
Could be used as
from from a political standpoint, right? So like,
hmm
okay, from my understanding about Al Qaeda is it's sort of similar. Like at least ISIS was very outspoken about that, how they wanted to um, create this sort of the sort of caliphate, right? Like that's sort of the idea here is there's this like pan Islamist movement to create this sort of like to basically reinvent the old sort of Islamic empire, right? The sort of Umayyad or sort of prior caliphates in the past, right, where it spanned 20 countries. But and it's led by a caliph, right? You sort of have this monarchical system, but Syria today is sort of set up as this like democratic republic. And that seems really like, I don't want to say fishy, but like odd. Like,
It is
okay,
fishing, yeah.
Here's this guy from Al Qaeda, which is like total, like,
In New York
Islamic.
City.
Yeah. Well, there's that. But okay, now the Al Qaeda guy, now he's in charge. And what does he do? It's like a liberal democracy. Like, what? Like,
Yeah.
why is this such a Western state? Like, you would think that this guy coming from Al Qaeda, oh, we give him the keys now. Oh, he's going to create this sort of Islamic state where they're going to implement, maybe not extreme as the Taliban, but they would have some sort of Sharia law, or they
Worse
would
than the
sort of,
Taliban.
Okay, worse than the
Already.
Taliban.
What they're
They would
doing to
sort
the
of,
Druze, what they're doing to the Druze population in Syria is already far worse than what the Taliban. For an Al Qaeda proxy, the Taliban actually aren't so bad. I'm going to be honest. For a proxy of Al Qaeda, they're actually nowhere near as bad as, HTS, ISIS, Al Nusra, Al Qaeda themselves. They're not nearly as bad.
right.
And yeah, I mean, what they're doing to the Druze in Syria, the Christians in Syria, they're not treated well. A couple churches already have been destroyed, which is not in the media. It'll start to get ugly. It is not ugly yet, but it will become ugly. It's only been months.
But it just seems strange to me.
It
Like,
is.
like if you had, the analogy would be if you had some like Marxist come to power and then he starts privatizing, state-owned
Yeah.
companies and like cuts taxes. You're like, that's kind of weird. Like, you would think
Yeah.
that they would act in accordance with their sort of ideology, but he sort of, from what I can remember, is the new Syrian government is very like, it sort of follows a Western style, if that
hmm
makes sense. Like, it seems very like westernized. And I
I would say
think
the same
that,
thing with Lebanon. I would say the same thing with
yeah.
Lebanon, but Syria more
And,
so.
and so and so it's like, we don't know about it now, but in 50 years they declassify documents, and we've got our fingerprints everywhere. I would not be surprised if this was a total coordinated, like, as sort of we were alluding to earlier, how the US is sort of behind this in Syria.
There's already a lot of proof,
in
enough for me.
installing this Al Qaeda figure, which, if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, how about this question? What about Al Qaeda itself? Do you think that is sort of, that the US had any role in the creation of Al Qaeda, or
Well,
is it sort of
sorry, continue.
spontaneous? Is it this sort of spontaneous movement? Because the Taliban was not directly created by the United States, but
No, not at all.
the the Mujahideen had gotten support from the United States,
A
and
lot of support.
a lot of support, and that sort of be transformed into the Taliban.
I
What
wouldn't
about
say
like
Al Qaeda. No, oh, you mean the Mujahideen transformed into Al Qaeda?
well, Al Qaeda was founded in when, the 90s or the 80s?
Late 80s, early 90s, somewhere around there.
Okay,
End of the Cold War.
so
Not so
so
90.
do
End of
you
the Cold War was 91. So
So do you think that the U.S. had any involvement in the creation of Al Qaeda?
Oh yeah.
So then if that's the case, then it would make sense that like, oh, like there's this sort of
Here's the thing. All right, look, listen, real quick. If one of United States' close allies, pick an example, fucking Saudi Arabia. No, that's not legitimate because they're not a. All right, a United States close ally would be like a
Jordan or
Jordan. Yeah, let's say the King of Jordan, very close ally of the United States. Let's say him and his militants, right? They say, hey, we're just going to become an Islamic group that supports this, 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 and this. The United States probably say, absolutely fucking not, right?
Mhm.
Especially a country that, or I mean, a group that we literally installed specifically to counter Soviet Union that after the Cold War, they just they didn't disintegrate. They became Al Qaeda. You really think that we would just, if they straight up tell us we're just going to become an Islamic terrorist group, we're just going to say, okay, yeah, sure. With our
That's a good
weapons and
point.
money, we're just going to let that happen? No.
That's a good point.
Obviously, like it's not like we just said, okay, yeah, we'll just let them become Al Qaeda. We'll just let them become an Islamic terrorist group, and we'll just let them keep all of our weapons, right? The United States, the country that's known for regime changing all these countries all over the world. We're just going to let them do that. No, that just doesn't make any sense. That's stupid to think that. So we may have not had a role in the creation of Al Qaeda, but we obviously let it happen because we were in direct contact with the Mujahideen at that point.
Right.
Direct contact, constant contact with the Mujahideen at that point. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it would be really, really naive and stubborn to say that we didn't at least have complete knowledge that that was going on and that that happened and that we gave the approval. And that paves way to, in my opinion, the most obviously rigged election in the history of our country, which is the 2000 election.